It's time to Maria, José, and Ricardo.
Okay.
Beginning at the forest, the narrative and the memory of a sensorial experience. You have 12 minutes and the floor is yours.
Okay, I'll go fast. Can I share my screen?
Yes, of course you can.
Thank you.
Can you?
Yeah, I'm trying. It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay.
I don't know why.
You have to let her. She asks for it and then you let her.
Please do.
You have to permit it, Xavier.
Yeah, I'm
Oh yes, it's happening. Thank you.
good.
Okay. All right. So, oh my God, what happened? Oh yes. All right.
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful.
It's just I wanted to go to full screen.
Okay. Please, may you all close your microphones during Maria José's exposure?
Okay. Thank you. I don't know.
View.
Yes.
Screen.
Thank you. I was looking for it. All right. So once again, thank you for inviting us and having us here. We represent this master degree in innovation in culinary arts and sciences, and it's mainly the product of one of the challenges that we proposed to our students last year. The theme was sustainability, and this is what they come up with. So we talk about the food culture, and they have to know all the cycle, this food cycle from production to consumption. And we asked them, how do I, sorry. Oh, okay, sorry, too fast. Good Lord. Okay, sorry about that. Yes. Okay, so going back. Maybe I should not touch it anymore. All right, so I'll just talk to you. So we ask why are students motivated to do what is the motivation, what is the objective of the dining experience? Of course, the product itself, food, who is the consumer, who is the guest, and the scenario and the setting of the experience. So we thought about this idea of forest, coming from the forest to the plate. So there was a quotation here before, which was by our colleague, actually, Ricardo. And yes, I'm going back to that one, thank God. And it's this one. Creativity refers to the vision of original ideas versus innovation, which is the process by which new ideas are developed and implemented in practice. So this is a bit different because not every creative process leads to innovation. It has to be accepted and recognized by the community. So our challenge was create a gastronomic experience, but based on the sustainability concept of the forest. And so we got together, and the challenge was coming from this association, which is called Planting a Tree Association. And their goal is to provide the opportunity, it's a very positive goal, it's to provide the opportunity for each person to plant and take care of a tree every year. And they plant it all around the country. So we thought that nowadays consumers want to immerse in the world and express themselves and experience that world. So what would we do? So we considered the diner, the place, the food, the context, the time, but also the cooking, the techniques, and the arts of cooking that would influence the experience itself. So we asked all these questions. How can we create this dining experience that reflects all these principles from the biodiversity restoration and all these Portuguese ecosystems? And how can this experience be transferred to different parts of the country? Because it's a small country, Portugal, but it's so different in the north, south, the coastline and the countryside. So how can it be represented without, and this would be question number 3, without endangering these seasonal local consumption principles? And how can we translate this into a dining experience? And what are the processes, technological, and technical and in the cooking area? How can we respect the raw materials as well? So this came to the last question, which is actually what we try to answer here today, or at least give our perspective. What will still remain in guests' memory? What will they remember from this gastronomic experience? So we called it momentum. So momentum comes from the Latin expression that is the force that keeps us moving, the process that makes us go forward. So, and in physics is how you measure that development exactly. So we have all the guests, which in the first experience, we had 4 of them. The first experience, this is one of our colleagues actually, the other colleague of ours that coordinates the master. And there was this performance from arrival to departure. So of course the place was important. This was the first place where we did this experience, and it was actually the forest itself. And then it changed during the other experiences. This, for instance, is the second experience. It was inside a church, and the third one was a museum, and the fourth one, which is this one, was a theater, restored old theater. So the concept, the narrative, was about the tree cycle of life, because in Portugal there's lots of problems with fires and deforestation. So how can we take advantage of the forest, making people aware? Because the first guests were also related to areas of politics, economics, education, media. So we tried to choose the first guests, and we did. There were 20 guests. Not so much the last guests, and the second and third experience, which was in another place I'll tell you about, it was not up to us, but we did question them as well. And also keep in mind the sustainability of the materials and the food products. So the narrative would start with fire, which would be the destruction. Well, a moment about what we have now, and then immediately the fire, the destruction. And then how the cycle goes, the seeds, the sprout, the leaf, the flower, and the fruit, just to explain you. These are things that in the Portuguese culinary arts, we don't use in the ways we did, which is elderberry, acorn, and necklace. We don't in the way we use here. Also, we had the advantage of working with the design students, and they produced some of the containers of the dishes that the culinary students worked on. So there was kind of a very close dialogue between these two arts. We didn't manage to finish these products because of time and other circumstances. So the idea was how to create a menu that reflects all these productions cycle, but respecting all the identities of the territories. So this was the first moment, and the first moment you can see there the menu. I have for instance, the menu. I don't know if you can see here in my hand, but it's the menu of the fourth moment, the fourth experience, which actually had the seeds. It's like, I don't know, it's a transparent paper, but you can see the menu, and it's printed on paper that actually you take home and you plant, and then you can grow. It's something that is not new, but people would take it with them. And then they would also take this, which has a link and a number, and then you can follow the tree they would plant for you, and you can kind of foster that tree and see how it grows, and in another part of the country. So, so it's something where people do participate. This was the first menu. The paper was different. The setting was different. Of course, no tablecloths, because we wanted to be people to feel near nature and wood. This was a preparation of the fire moment because of charcoal, and so this was before the fire. And the first moment is actually called Cynthia because this was in Sintra, which is outskirts of Lisbon, and it's a very kind of magical place. So these were the starters. This was part of the beginning as well, the fire, and people would participate. This is scarlet shrimp and a fire gel, and people would actually end up cooking well, they assumed they did, but we actually pre-cooked it in the kitchen, and they would finalize the product. So this would be the seeds, also the participation of the staff, the mushrooms would be the sprouts, the flowers. There were various moments within the folio, the flower and leaves moments. So this, of course, are all edible. And this is the main course, which is wild boar from the forest and parsnip leaves and an egg yolk. So this is just to show you one of the supports that this is a palate cleanser. And actually they were so nice and they smelled so well, the wood, that people actually wanted to take them home, but we couldn't allow that because we needed them for another situation. And the honeycomb, of course, because it all makes sense and it all comes together as an honeycomb and the honey product. And finally, this was the final moment, which was the other part of the dessert. These were ice creams. You can see the passion fruit in the back, the pear and the lemon. And guests would choose previously which one would they prefer, which flavor would they prefer, but they had no idea what to expect. So in the end, they would actually go out into the forest and look for their own fruit. And they had the names on them. They were in the support here. It doesn't show because this was the preparation and it was dark at the time, so it was very exciting. This is the second and third moment, actually. If you can see on the left, there's some preparation of the desserts. They were, for instance, they were changed because honey, it was with orange. We changed it to add orange, for instance, because it's a local product. So we did think about this. Festival was the festival of the forgotten food. So we didn't do the whole menu because it was extremely hard. But we just presented 5 moments, and we did change those most of the ingredients to adapt to the geographical situation. And this was oh sorry, actually there's a link in the bottom. Then I can send you if you want. And also for this one, well, you can see more about these experiments. But they were all with performance, especially the first and the second and the last one, where people would participate in different ways. So this is our questionnaire about moment 1 and 4 of momentum. We had 20 guests and then 40 guests, mainly Portuguese in the first part, Portuguese and foreign in the last one, and all the answers. So what did we ask them? We asked them, so is there something that triggers your senses when you eat? And apparently smell and taste were the most chosen ones. And how would you describe them? And the main ideas were grandma's food, traditional food, grandparents, and childhood. It does skip a generation apparently, but it's all in the past. So what elements impress you? I mean, would trigger that would be ambience and food, exactly the same. And what is most present for you and in your memory? And it's mainly, it's like things that interact with people. So it's like centerpieces, enchanted forest, different textures of food, and ambience again. Starts the appetizers in the table. The long table, because you're not separated. You can actually face everyone and see everyone. So it's like the communality idea. The colors and textures, the immersion in nature, and the dinner in the middle of the forest in the first case, right? So what was the sense that actually proved to be the highest one was the sight. That was what really impressed people. And of course, they all considered that memory was an important element in the gastronomic experience. And why? Because an experience, and this is very important for us, an experiment is made of past moments. So it's not what you eat, you're not what you eat, but what you ate. So actually it's, it could be kind of a memory. We no longer only want to eat, but to live an experience. So that's much more than that. It makes you feel involved in the food situation, and all experiences are built upon related memories. So you're creating new memories. That's our ideal. And you relieve your experience. So memory is a part of who you are. So which of the dishes do you remember better? And this is very interesting because 70% was the fire moment. That's the fire. Brought again the picture of the fire, 70%. But also the one in the forest looking for the the fruit, right? So the fructus moment. Eximpium is, it means destruction, right? And Cynthia is 45%. Cynthia it means Sintra, comes from Latin, Cynthia. And it's actually because they were displayed, the several moments in the beginning, they were displayed on the table as centerpieces. So people would actually communicate with the table and the setting in that way. So in the end, taste, oh, sorry.
We are over the time. I was trying to tell you by chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just for conclusion, well, how would you describe the experience, a unique travel inside? So it's all about them in this magical moment. It explored the forest ecosystem, wonderful scenario, a delight to the senses and a true version of the miracle of nature and scientific evolution, and the discovery of a new sense of gastronomy in the middle of an environment. So yeah, so I mean, they all agreed it was great. I thought it was 15 minutes at the beginning, so when I just heard it was 12, I just rushed. Sorry. So I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Maria Jose.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I couldn't see anything. I just the presentation, so that's why.
So now it's time for a few questions to Maria Jose and Ricardo. So the floor is yours. Any question?
It's almost lunchtime, so here in Portugal at least, so you know.
Almost. It's okay. Well, yes.
Yeah, I've got a question. So I was just a little bit unclear. What you've just shown is it was like a kind of program for the students in the master's course that you're running.
Mm-hmm. So actually, it's thank you for your question, and it's a very interesting idea that I wanted to share, but which is they always have projects. We call them transversal, like transdisciplinary projects, because they pick things from every subject in a master degree. Actually, we never thought about having dining experiences before, but like 6 years ago, one of the classes, they wanted to do something similar to the Spanish El Somni by the Roca Brothers, and they challenged us to do it. We couldn't accommodate it in our course, so it was up to them. So we decided to, after that, to create another challenge. So this is like this is like the second challenge of the course, which is create. They always have a theme. This year it will be literature, so they have to reinterpret a text, for instance. But it's not what food is in the text, it's what feelings does the text transmit you, and what can you do, how can you do that through food? So it's kind of a perception of feelings. So in this case, last year, we were challenged by this association because of all the forest problems. And because our topic was also sustainability that year, it all made sense. So we tried to pair up these two challenges. The product, which is an industrial product that could go to the market, and this dining experience that actually, if they are gastronomic arts and science students, they do want to, you know, feel the arts part and not only the scientific one. And so it does come from, it came in the beginning from a challenge to us, teacher, and coordination from the students. Well, masters are students, they're not only teachers. We learn from students as well, thank God.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it actually has maybe several connections to the project that I'm trying to work on. And just as a additional thing, it made me think, I was just reading the other day, this anthropologist, David Sutton, talks about, he kind of gives this proposal of memory itself as a sense. It's David Sutton from, I think, 2010. Food and the Senses is the name of the article, but it's quite interesting. So could be something to look into.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria Jose. And now it's time to Helen Macbeth from Oxford Brookes University with gastronomy, seasonality, locality, and sustainability. Lessons from a long memory and recent pandemics. The floor is yours, Helen.
Okay, first I'm about to try to share the screen, so you better accept me. Okay. Oh dear, I see that the pictures are going to cover half some of the screen. Let's see what happens with slideshow.
We can see it perfectly.
There we Yeah, but half the words are going to be missing. But you all speak good English, so you'll have to just listen to me on this. But first, I want to thank the organisers, Xavier, and all of you, who, despite the current problems, have achieved putting on an ICAF conference in 2020, which took hard work and a lot of imagination. So big congratulations from me. The four main words for my talk are gastronomy, seasonality, locality, and sustainability. And my paper continues my previous ICAF papers on food sustainability, and which may be familiar just to some of you, I'm sure to Xavier. Anyhow, I started my own chapter in the last ICAF book, Food and Sustainability in the 21st Century, with a question: has growing food for the family become an anachronism? Do you grow any food for your family? Did your parents? Did your grandparents? My recent papers for ICAF have discussed growing food in the locality, in gardens and allotments, or on any land available, basing my topic on the amazing nutritional survival in the Second World War of the islands of Britain. The island populations were, of course, surrounded by sea. Before that war, Britain had imported 50% of all its foods. During the war, many ships were sunk by enemy action, their cargoes lost. So producing enough food for the population required a whole new system by the government: rationing. Rationing distributed the food fairly to all, whether poor, rich, or royal. The government not only took control of food from farm or port through production processes to retail distribution, but also created radio, film, and magazine propaganda for people to grow their own food. The slogan was, "Dig for victory." I hope you can see it on my screen, it's half covered. So they did dig for victory, growing vegetables in any spare land they could find, public parks, beside railways, beside roads, on allotments, in their own gardens, even in small gardens. Although individuals also raised chickens, had beehives, got together even to raise a pig on kitchen straps. 1940s, that's wartime, health surveys showed that across all the socioeconomic groups, there was better overall nutrition of the UK population than before or after the war. Many grew their own vegetables throughout the war and continued in the 1950s. But then gradually, fewer people did. This led to a reduction of allotments. For example, in many places, the land was sold for building new homes. More recently, however, there's been an increase in the demand for allotments. And in many places, there are now waiting lists as people understand the advantages of healthy food and exercise. My recent papers have discussed homegrown food, localism, and sustainability. Sustainability in the sense of food security, at the same time, reduction of global warming. But now I want to add two more words: gastronomy and seasonality. There is something that has now disappeared from many people's lives, waiting for the first new potatoes of a new season. But now you can buy so-called new potatoes all year round. Yet I remember the taste of the first new potatoes of the year, straight from the garden, boiled and served with melted butter, maybe with chives chopped onto them. I believe that the wait increased the gastronomic pleasure. Maybe some of you remember waiting for the first local raspberries or strawberries, or any first of the year crop that you remember. Now, I live in a northern climate where seasons are important for growing vegetables. Many seeds must not be sown too early in the year in case the plants show leaves above the ground before the last hard frost. I don't know how it is in other climates, but waiting for the produce of a new summer adds to gastronomic pleasure of the taste of the first new season. But now, food provisioning has changed. Food shops became supermarkets, then hypermarkets. Even more food was transported across the globe. Seasonal food could be bought in any season. But is the taste the same as when it is local and fresh? Supermarkets and hypermarkets got bigger, more impersonal, more international, more multinational. Food now travels to huge distribution centers, then travels again. Techniques are used to keep fresh food, so-called fresh, which affects the taste. More processing, more packaging. Some foods now common in our diet have for centuries been imported from distant countries because they don't grow in our climate. We shall no doubt continue to import these. But what of seasonal foods of one hemisphere being transported across the world to be available out of season in the other hemisphere? If the gastronomy of today is being based on being able to get any food in any season, do you call that gastronomic diversity? I say it's gastronomic monotony, whereas seasons cause gastronomic diversity because of the delight of a new season. So for seasonality, gastronomy, and at the same time, sustainability, I say look again at locality. Go shopping in local markets where many stalls are run by local producers, selling local in-season foods, especially the farmers' markets, which often include stalls from other local artisans producing other food products. Now, this may be misleading because not all our food on fresh food stalls in such local markets is really local. Look at this photo. Local strawberries are in season here at the minute, but oranges? And what about that stall of fresh vegetables that I found in a Paris in February? So not all local foods on these so-called local markets. So my issue is not about avoiding supermarkets, but about seeking what is truly local. Perhaps it's not so easy for town folk, but around my home, there are also opportunities for foraging, fruit, mushrooms, nuts, according to season. Some people fish, some people hunt. But if we cease to buy imports, maybe there's another perspective. What about the local welfare of the producer areas? What about those small farmers in the exporter nations? Look again, kilometers. This is what's really happening. Kilometers of plastic-covered hectares of land in Almeria, producing vegetables for export, worked by migrant labor, adding plastic waste to the sea and to all around. Meanwhile, local producers fail, local village life declines. An Oxford economist friend who advises African governments tells me he now recommends that the governments, encourage more food production for local food needs and less cash cropping for export. So localism is good for them too, if the past can ever be reclaimed. And now we have the pandemic. My view is from a village where life also changed. I locked down, that self-isolate, early in March, but I have a garden, an allotment, and can be out of doors in the village and surrounding fields. I've been here from before planting my potatoes, carrots, lettuces, until after I've harvested them, and I still go nowhere, as you can see from my long hair. But I communicate by email, telephone, Skype, and Zoom. There are fewer cars on the road, more people walk or cycle, and yet I have no food monotony. Neighbors share, local producers and stores have delivery systems, and volunteers help in any way they can. And we have a home-based artisan chocolatier in our village. In fact, these online small businesses are doing well during the pandemic. But what about towns and cities? I know it's been very different experience of the pandemic. If you live in a city, have your daily patterns changed? In lockdown, do you shop for food less often? If you have no garden, do you grow food on a balcony, a rooftop, or an urban allotment? Do you have access to the countryside or order online? But even in the cities, you can still choose to buy the foods that are local and in season. Do you buy less? Do you waste less? Food waste is a huge environmental problem, so please at least recycle waste. Do you drive less, travel less? Will this pandemic help us enjoy what's local and seasonal? Are new foodways developing that will benefit the planet? So by Zoom, I thank you for listening. Keep well and best wishes. And I'm sorry, I'm one of those that had to read my paper. It's a factor of old age. Thank you. And I can now stop sharing. There.
Thank you very much, Helen.
Was I in time? Yes.
Yes, perfectly. Don't worry about that. Now it's time for questions. So, questions, comments, anything to say?
Don't worry. Get back onto the schedule. I hate questions anyhow.
I have a question. I may not be raising my hand correctly, and I'm sorry if that's the case. Do you have time for me?
Yes.
Yes. I wanted to ask about
Who's talking?
I'm sorry, this is Leah Ash, and let's see if I can do this correctly. Trying to get used to Zoom here. I'm not very experienced.
Never mind. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Well, I can't turn on my video, but anyway, for now, we'll just go by voice. I like this idea of gastronomic diversity versus monotony, and it's kind of a reformulation of some of the things that we tend to think about, well, having different foods available to us. One of the things that struck me, let's say ethnographically, from my couple of years in the UK, was the importance of a list. This was something that struck me in every home that I visited, every let's say group of people that I frequented. And the list seems to negate the possibility of gratuity or surprise, either that comes via nature or via the marketplace or so forth. And I was wondering, as from your perspective, as somebody who lives in Britain, and you kind of celebrate this gratuity of nature and this surprise that comes with the seasons, that would negate the possibility, let's say, of a meal plan for a week, or a diet plan, or well, let's say a plan, a list. I just wonder if you could reflect on that difference.
I think you started with a question about diversity, and you are suggesting, I think, that the list and planning ahead for the week allows that diversity. Around me are the busy parents of young children, elderly folk, and such, and I'm sure, like me, they make a list, but whether they plan the whole weeks to be different, I don't know. Most of the people I've found in their daily life may be having diversity in that they are buying something from Africa or from somewhere unusual, but whatever they're doing for a week, I think you'll find that week after week is much the same, even if the days of the week may be a bit different. I can't really answer that. I'm just saying that there's a kind of, you have the whole world open to you going into these big supermarkets all the time, but do you really buy such different things week by week? And my experience is that people don't, they still have all the choice, but they don't actually make much difference in their life choices from all this availability. And that's what I meant by diversity. The diversity's there, but I don't think it's gastronomic. I don't think people use it. They just know they can, but don't.
Thanks. Thank you for those ideas.
Okay. No questions? Yeah, Carolina. Open your microphone, please.
You're mute. You're still muted.
Yeah, I was muted. Sorry. Yeah, I was wondering, because not always locally means organic. So I was wondering if people in England put like privilege the fact that food is organic or the fact that it's local. So I was wondering if they privilege any of those.
The sound is unclear.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear noise, but not the words.
may you repeat your question?
Yeah, the sound is not clear. Maybe if I take... Okay. Yeah, I'm going to take the video. Maybe that it's better for me to explain now. Okay.
Yes,
So
okay.
my question was that food plant locally doesn't always imply that that food is organic. So I was wondering if...
You've gone.
Yeah, you're gone. But well,
No.
the question.
Sorry, I'm gone.
There she
I
is.
think I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just may I just take the bit I did here, because the one bit I did here is that plant food is not necessarily organic.
Mm.
And one of the things in a totally different ICAF conference that I talked about, so-called pure food, I was talking about, and I studied a whole farm that did organic food. And in the end, they stopped doing it because for example, they found a problem with their soil and they couldn't remedy their soil for the benefit, in fact, of this case was the beef animals. They couldn't remedy it in an organic way, and it was better for the animals and for the ultimate beef that they actually benefited the soil. The mineral deficiencies in the soil led to better, healthier beef and better, healthier cattle and better beef. And they dropped the organic organization qualification. Of course, there's lots of different organic qualifications, but do be a little careful of what is called organic. I think you're right. You want to be free of pesticides and things, but not being able to remedy a mineral deficiency in the soil, leading to a weakness in the grass that the animals were eating, was a lesson. I won't say I know the answer to the lesson, but I'm telling you there's a lesson there.
Okay, so thank you very much, Helen.
I'll mute myself again.
Thank you. And now it's time for William LaFleur from the University of Helsinki in Finland, with sensing sustainable futures and situating foodways in everyday practice, community responses and emerging alternatives in the time of COVID-19. So the floor is yours. You have first to unmute.
Okay, I guess you can hear me now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I guess I'm a little nervous. This is my first, I guess, presentation as a PhD student. So what I'm going to present is actually, it's my proposal, which is still, which I'm hoping to do research on. So I'm also hoping in sharing this with you some nice critical feedback and commentary on the proposal. I'll try to get through it, through everything. So if I can, let me share my screen. And I guess everyone can see this, I hope. Okay, so let me begin. So I'm Will LaFleur. I'm a PhD researcher based at the University of Helsinki in global development studies. My background is in anthropology and as a teacher. And the presentation I'm sharing with you, the title, as was already read, I just changed it slightly. So sensing sustainable futures and situating foodways in everyday practice, community responses and emerging alternatives in a time of multiple crises. Now I've changed it to multiple crises because, well, you can see this photo here. It illustrates multiple crises. You can see migrant workers on an industrial farm picking what looks like strawberries. One person is handing another person a mask. And at first you might think this is a COVID-19 precaution, since so many reports of farm workers being at particular risk. However, if you look at in the horizon, in the sky in the back, you'll see that it's quite hazy. And that's hazy because this photo was taken a few weeks ago in California, which is experiencing its worst wildfire season on record. So you're actually looking at a photo where the climate crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, are kind of there. But this presentation is about another crisis, which for me, I take as the driver of the COVID and the climate crises, and that is industrial agriculture. So modern industrial and globalized food systems, which have long been billed as a way to feed the world, for example, are increasingly implicated as offenders of rising obesogenic diseases, climate emissions, biodiversity and cultural heritage loss, vector-borne and infectious diseases. So you can think of Zika in the Americas a few years ago, and now COVID-19 pandemic. So such considerations point to the necessity of food systems. So this project examines local foodways, which, yeah, I define historical, sociocultural, economic practices relating to production, processing, distribution, and consumption of food. So local foodways which are pursuing agroecological or regenerative aims in southern Finland and in northwest Italy, and how these local foodways movements are developing in response to the uncertainties of these concurrent crises. So I'm taking in this project a socio-sensory approach, which I'll talk about in a moment, to understand change as it's made and as it emerges through everyday practical activity in foodways. So this is a kind of it takes as its starting point, local foodways are in diverse social and ecological contexts, are not actually managed globally, as is sometimes implied in kind of food security approaches, but it's actually made through everyday practices of people on the ground. And it's these everyday practices to which this project is attend. So just to enter the project, there are 3 kind of questions I'm thinking of. These are not the questions, but these are the entryway. So what are regenerative, sustainable alternatives to global food and agribusiness? How are they developing in diverse local contexts amidst and in relation to concurrent global crises? And what conditions engender resiliency, that is economic viability, and socio-ecological sustainability in the long term? The plan is to analyze and compare local foodways in Uusimaa, which is the Helsinki and extended region, and in Piemonte in Italy. In Italy, I've already done field work there in my master's degree, so I've established some relationships with an eco-village near Bra, which is connected to the Slow Food headquarters. In Uusimaa in Finland, I don't have a concrete plan, but the intention is to work with one agricultural project and then through them connect with other foodways actors. In both cases, the research will be carried out with actors pursuing these regenerative or agroecological systems combined with convivial and community outreach projects that are seeking to transform the systems to be more resilient. So the 2 locations juxtapose local foodways with very different histories and cultural practices around foods, but that nonetheless operate alongside and within large-scale global systems and are both affected by the EU's Common Agricultural Policy, the CAP. So ethnographic fieldwork is planned to take part in 2 distinct phases. So one full growing season in each place over 2 years.
Will, may you hear me?
Yes.
Are you passing the slides?
Yeah.
They're fixed in the first one. We can only see the first one.
Oh, really?
Yes. But the first one seems to be fixed.
Can you see this one?
No.
The second one?
No. Just the first one.
With
your name. It was a bit strange, but
Is there a little television symbol at the bottom of your right screen or left screen? And click it, because you're not on, you're still on,
no.
You have to click each one.
Now it's already running. Yeah.
Okay, can you see now?
Yeah, now, yes.
Okay, so maybe I'll just leave it as this. Okay, so I was...
We'll have in 5 minutes, so...
Okay, so there's two approaches that I'm taking, this sensory ethnographic approach, and analytically a food system using this qualitative metric of a food system resilience tool. The aim of taking these approaches is to develop a holistic understanding of how resiliency is made through everyday and situated practice, and to formulate resiliency also as a tangible category to be used by policymakers and activists. So I just want to talk a little bit about this sensory ethnographic approach. I would imagine some of you probably know about it, but so due to the concurrent global crises, the sensory ways that we experience the world are quickly changing and having profound implications for our relations with the world. But these are not very well understood. And as science goes, it's traditionally been pretty difficult to study sensation as it pertains to society and culture for some historical reasons, which have to do with Aristotle in ancient Greece, Immanuel Kant, who ordered the senses in such a way, which turned into something like this in the Enlightenment time. Nowadays, in a more modern sense, the senses have been studied in psychology and neurobiology as receptors for external stimuli or in isolation. But the approach I'm taking is fundamentally shifting away from this into what is the study of sensory studies, sensory anthropology. To decenter vision as the most knowledgeable sense. The five senses are just one of many folk theories that can exist, but actually all sense perception is multi-sensory, and this is the kind of forms the baseline of the project. So to give just a little rationale, these the socio-sensory relations, they're fairly new in social sciences, and the idea is to go beyond standard approaches to food. So in nutrition, for example, the anthropologist Claude Fischler, he's demonstrated that actually convivial and commensal food waste practices are actually better indicators of health and well-being than nutrition focused countries like the US, for example. And also nutritional focuses tend to ignore cultural heritage and the sensory or visceral manipulation of food by industrial food processors that has an effect on our bodies. Food security approaches are limited by a productivist ideology that emphasizes outcomes rather than processes and quantity over quality. And then techno-fix strategies tend to reinforce global food and agribusiness structures, which are at the root of these crises. There are also food sovereignty approaches, which I would consider mine to be much more in line with. And these do account for the place-based and socio-political dimensions of foodways. However, they generally have not sought to capture the essential multisensoriality of life and the socio-political implications that reside in socio-sensory analyses. So taking this, from this approach, there are three questions that I would say 3 lines of inquiry from which questions and new threads of inquiry will emerge through the research process, which is kind of the principle of sensory ethnography. So to identify how strategies of resilience in local foodways are made and emerge through everyday practice amidst the contingencies of the concurrent crises. Number 2, to reveal how everyday sensory, material, atmospheric, and convivial experiences of life are generated through food waste practices and how they inform and orientate local food systems toward or away from sustainable possibilities. And last, to identify the incongruences or congruences in local food systems that condition their resilience, economic viability, and long-term sustainability. Theoretical considerations, I'm nearly finished. It's based, the idea is that from an onto-epistemological level, I take knowledge to be, following Tim Ingold, it's based in movement rather than being based in cognition, which would be, for example, Cartesian and Kantian derived assumptions of normative and rational science, which is how their science has been traditionally founded. So this concept of making is recast, taking this Aristotle notion of a hylomorphic model of making, so where an idea in the mind is then applied to a material substrate in the world, so the combination of form and matter. So doing away with that and favoring a morphogenetic model, so things are made in ever emergent and sentient engagements with materials and things, immersed in atmospheres and mediums of the world, of the weather, for example. And this notion of making better parallels the anticipatory and improvisatory everyday activity that exemplifies Foodways in an age of climate precarity and the specter of COVID-19. And this idea of making also informs a re-theorization of resilience, which is seen as both a lived experience that emerges through everyday practice and produced through and at the local global intersection, but is also a representational category used by policymakers. But despite it being a category, to recognize that it can't be reduced to a rigid or fixed quality that's attributed to a town or even a system. But resilience must be understood through a focus on the ways in which people relate with their socio-political environments, rather than as a top-down process that's done to a system. In doing this, a more nuanced understanding of resiliency would hopefully be unveiled. And then there are some extra theoretical invocations that sensory ethnography brings, the idea of emplacement and atmospheres, the immaterial and intangible but felt and meaningful experiences of place, how they're remembered, how they're experienced, and how they're imagined in the future. So there's, I didn't put the citation there, but yeah, so then finally, the analytical tools, this food system resiliency tool, it's a qualitative measure that allows for kind of a holistic understanding of the links in the local food systems, especially for peri-urban food systems that I'll be looking at, as well as visceral politics as a way of analysis. This is a critical analysis that tries to understand how the power structures, for example, of global industrial food systems viscerally manifest in local foodways through our sensation, through bodies, through atmospheres. So how, you know, a scientifically or a laboratory created microwave dinner manifests in your body through these different kind of means. So it's a tool to connect these macro processes with the body. And yeah, the overall kind of, then the overall goal of this project is I hope to illuminate these previously unconsidered possibilities and barriers to, or unseen barriers to, shaping holistically sustainable food systems in diverse contexts. And the insights would ideally inform policy and intervention toward the viability of local foodways that compete in markets saturated by global food and agribusiness. And yeah, that's all. Sorry, I hope that was clear enough. It was kind of rushed, but
thank you very much, Will. And now it's time for questions. Any question? No questions, no comments.
I have.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know who.
Okay, who's first? Sabine or?
Go ahead, Sabine.
Okay, thank you. No, I was just wondering if there is ready access to sharing participant emails, because I would love to talk with you further, Will, as I'm in, I think we're in opposite stages of the PhDs, and I'm in the midst of applying for a number of postdocs on the same subject of essentially multiple crises and compounding uncertainties. So it would just be great to discuss this further at some point. So no questions at present other than, can I get your email?
Yeah, for sure. Maybe I can send it to Xavier, and then could you send it to, maybe I can write my email in the chat? Yeah,
sure. I think I've stuck mine at the end of my presentation as well, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Looking forward to seeing how this takes shape.
Cool, yeah, very nice, thank you.
Remember that all the session will be recorded, and you will get access to everything after the Congress. So, Leah?
Yeah, thanks, Will. Looks like you've got an exciting project there coming up. So congratulations and good wishes, first of all. And then you piqued my curiosity with the methodology that you mentioned, or the methodological tactics that you'll use. And you named two, and I'd like to ask how you're going to combine them, or how you might envision combining them in your knowledge making. So on the one hand, I think you named sensory ethnographic approach.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, a food systems metric approach, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And what occurred to me is that the first of those is an interpretive, curious, kind of artisanal practice of knowledge making, of information getting and knowledge making afterwards. And I'd describe it kind of in general terms as an opening or a widening approach. And the second one is what I intuit to be a technic or a technical and a narrowing approach. And so I guess I'd like to ask how you plan on pulling these together in your own thinking.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something I've actually given quite a bit of thought to. So actually, with the sensory ethnographic approach, yeah, you're exactly right about it. I would add that particularly with sensory ethnography, there is this sort of this opening, like it's not meant to be just documentarian, but also interventionist, and also, you know, future looking, so in an applied way. And the reason for the other approach, this resiliency tool, the reason I've found it and then selected it, found it to be quite useful for this project is because it's not a quantitative approach. It's a qualitative approach that doesn't necessarily require any kind of closure. And it helps to frame the system as a dynamic system. And in that dynamism, it's able to match with the sensory ethnographic approach, which is based in continuity and movement, to be able to kind of, at the end, in the sort of final stages, to be able to sort of place it in this framework without having it become static. So that I guess the fact that it's a qualitative metric helps it to become, you know, helps it to avoid being fixed or closed. So that's how I'm thinking at this point the two approaches would work together.
Okay. Thanks.
I was mute. So thank you very much, William. Congratulations for your presentation and also for your research. And good luck. And now it's time for Sabine Parrish with Origins of Value, Brazilian Specialty Coffee Consumers, and the question of product origin. Those
right.
Yours, 12 minutes.
Okay, how do I share my screen? There we go. We go share screen. We do this. We share, and we play. And I hope this is not too pink and intense, but honestly, I'm 2 months away from submitting my PhD, and I needed some fun in my life, so I've gone with the colors. Okay. So I'm taking us back to sort of reflecting on the places of gastronomy, which sort of links into some of the earlier presentations we had today. And so this is drawn from one of the chapters in my PhD thesis. So the geographer Benjamin Coles, who I believe is based at the University of Sussex, in a piece entitled Ingesting Places, the Embodied Geographies of Coffee, he explores both the material and the imaginative properties of coffee. And he asks, for something like coffee, whose geographies are only partially revealed, yet openly deployed, this raises a question about the commodity itself. Is it the bean? Is it the place? So in this presentation, I'm going to explore what the boundaries of this place are, and by looking at the classification of product origin by Brazilian specialty coffee consumers. And this work draws on over 13 months of ethnographic fieldwork that I primarily conducted within the city of Sao Paulo, but also in a number of other sites throughout Brazil. And this work focused on the experience of coffee consumers in Brazil, which is the world's largest coffee producing nation. And so just by means of quick contextualization, when I'm talking about specialty coffee, what I'm talking about is the really high quality coffee, that's prized very much for its unique sensory characteristics, and it is held to come from specific origins. And you'll kind of know a specialty coffee shop when you see it. It's filled with snotty hipsters. It's generally quite white and clean and has this very particular aesthetic. But the term origin within specialty coffee, that refers essentially to where a given coffee is from. And this is used within, broader commodity coffee as well. If we were to take a little field trip right now and head to a supermarket, we would see that the coffees on the shelves would be listed as this one's from Honduras, this one's from Costa Rica, Brazil, Kenya, etc. And so you're going to find country of origin labeling on essentially every package of coffee, unless it's a blend, in which case you'll still probably find it, but in very tiny letters somewhere on the underside of the bag. So for industry employees and enthusiasts in specialty coffee, it's also worth noting that for particularly those in coffee importing countries, visits to origin are a very important sort of status symbol, and it's a growing and emerging form of gastronomic tourism. So origin is really important in the marketing and the discourse and the positioning of specialty coffee as an industry, or as one speaker at the 2019 World of Coffee Industry Expo in Berlin put it, origin is at the heart of everything we do. And so this is one of the ways that specialty coffee is made special. It's through this discursive emphasis on sensory and quality differentiation that is based on terroir and the geographic origin, which sets specialty coffee apart from conventional mass market, potentially blended coffees. And so parallel to wine connoisseurs, a specialty coffee connoisseur is sort of expected to possess a broad knowledge of the sensory characteristics of various origins around the world. In that, a Brazilian coffee is broadly held to taste of chocolate and oranges, where something from East Africa may taste more of red fruits, blackberries, that sort of thing. And so origin, it figures very prominently both in industry and in academic writing on specialty coffee, but these writings have very much naturalized this idea of origin as located in a geographic elsewhere, a space of the other, and they assume this very vast separation between product and consumers, which we saw a little bit in Helen's presentation earlier when I believe you popped up a picture of some coffee and some tea as something that naturally came from very far away. Well, this is not necessarily the case if one is a coffee consumer in somewhere which is also producing coffee, of course. So for Brazilian specialty coffee consumers, this landscape of origin necessarily differs because it is a producing country. But likewise, there are protectionist trade policies in place that they're there to protect the Brazilian coffee crop, and they effectively ban the importation of other coffees into Brazil. So Brazilian specialty coffee consumers are obliged to consume almost exclusively Brazilian coffee. And if sort of industry, the sort of, transnational consumer subculture, really values this idea of different national origins and terroir to distinguish between coffees from different countries. And this is a way to sort of make these claims of differentiation and distinction, and for connoisseurs to sort of show their knowledge. What then is the role of origin for consumers in Brazil, restricted as they are to effectively only Brazilian coffees? And so I set out to ask, what is the discourse around product origin of coffee in Sao Paulo? Now, I started to ask people about which non-Brazilian coffee origins they had tried. And I started getting some answers that really surprised me, where people were saying, oh yeah, I've had coffees from Colombia, Peru, Italy, Ethiopia. And someone else, yeah, I've tried coffees from the USA, Italy, Uruguay. I don't think any stood out from Brazilian coffees. Someone else, oh, I've been so lucky and I've tried coffees from many different origins. Ethiopia, Guatemala, United States, Mexico, France, Canada, all different, all wonderful. And the more people I spoke to, the more I kept running into what seemed to be a problem, in that lots of non-coffee producing countries kept popping up. And obviously, at first I thought I was the problem. You know, I speak fluent Portuguese, that's fine. But then it's like, oh no, clearly I'm just the bewildered ethnographer. I have no idea what's going on. So I spent the next year asking people follow-up questions, and I have listed in my notes coffee origins, despite not producing coffee. Australia, Austria, Argentina, Canada, Italy, France, Germany, Greece, the United States, the United Kingdom, Japan, South Korea, and Uruguay. You will note that Australia and the United States do produce very, very small amounts of coffee, but they are not classed as coffee producing countries by the International Coffee Organization. And so it seemed to be whether or not a coffee had actually been grown in the particular country of origin seemed to be something of sort of secondary consideration. And this was expressed by one of my interviewees, a man named Hermano, who had formerly been a specialty coffee barista himself. And we have him saying, American coffee was terrible, just common stuff. England, I tried some coffees when I was visiting, but nothing special. Now that I think about it, you know, I'm not sure if they were grown there or not. I've also tried Argentinian coffee, which was fine. And coffee grows not in Argentina and certainly not in England, I can tell you, as it is absolutely pouring down rain here. So in her book, Coffee Life in Japan, the anthropologist Mary White explores Japan as a type of coffee origin within specialty coffee, despite Japan not growing coffee. And it had a long history of coffee consumption, which began in the 1700s, and it has developed distinct styles of making and brewing coffee, as well as many attendant materials and technologies. And so you can see what White has written here, but essentially, Japan functions as a type of product origin. And this is exactly the same way that the Brazilian specialty coffee consumers that I was speaking with were able to talk about having coffee from origins such as Italy or Canada. And Canada definitely does not grow coffee. And so the provenance of the raw material does not necessarily outweigh the additional value added input that was accrued by coffees as they moved throughout the sort of value chain or commodity chain. And so this, you know, okay, we've got a bit of a complication here in terms of this dominant understanding of origin as tied to sort of where coffee is produced. So to be able to say that a coffee has an origin of the United Kingdom essentially necessitates an awareness of the other forms of labor and production that exist in relation to that coffee. And this includes here the labor that is done by figures such as baristas and roasters, who are often not figuring in mainstream coffee discourse as producers, precisely because they are not agricultural producers. And even more to the point, they are not the laborers who pick the coffee themselves, because other forms of agricultural labor such as, you know, that done by agronomists or botanical specialists also does not figure. You will not see it in marketing materials of the specialty coffee industries. And so a lot of the specialty coffee discourse draws on these sort of fair trade ideologies, which emphasize the social relations and the environmental impact of production. And these specialty coffee companies really do emphasize and do a good job of celebrating some of the forms of labor which do go into the production of these coffees. And then marketing claims essentially construct specialty coffee as a form of the defetishized commodity coffee, which evades Marx's problem of commodity fetishism. And this is done, by other, among other things, naming the producers, showcasing photographs of producers at work, advocating these models of direct trade, whereby coffee shops and roasteries purchase directly from farmers and co-ops in producing countries. But again, it's a very sort of limited version of the labor that actually does go into producing a crop. So the political scientist Gavin Friedel, based in Canada, he has written a really comprehensive structural analysis of fair trade and the ethical coffee industries. And he's written that whether formally embedded in certified programs such as fair trade or not, a lot of these alternative models of consumption, which we can include in their specialty coffee and the direct trade model, they seek to include the sectors that have thus far been excluded from the benefits of international trade. However, it has been my argument that only certain forms of labor and sectors are included, or to draw on Polanyi's accounts of capitalist development, essentially re-embedded in these social relations. So I think that Gavin Friedel is very right to note that these producers who alternative trade movements foreground are those who have historically gained the least and suffered the most under regimes of conventional trade. But this narrow focus on labor at coffee farms presents two problems for this industry, which purports to take both flavor and the senses and trade ethics seriously. So firstly, a limited vision of where and by whom labor within specialty coffee is conducted contributes to the masking of exploitation and labor abuses at other sites along the supply chain, which may be rendered invisible by this narrow focus. The second problem we have returns us to the material and sensory properties of specialty coffees, in that given that flavor is known to be created not only by where a coffee is grown, but also through things such as post-harvest processing, roasting, and even brewing, which are all forms of work that involve labor and skill, the foregrounding of geographic origin, of agricultural origin, and the farmer over all other sites of labor suggests that perhaps rather than a defetishization of the commodity, that specialty coffee has potentially fallen into a double fetish, because through the particular imagination of the other and these distant places that is invoked through specialty coffee marketing and materials, origin itself has become commodified and consumable. Anyway, I think, yeah, you're trying to tell me
you're over the time, yeah.
That's what I thought. So that pretty much sums it up. I had one more slide, but I don't think it's that important, so we'll skip it. It was just a reiteration of that question, and that is all.
Thank you very much, Sabine. And now it's time for questions to Sabine. So,
I would like to make some comments, please.
Okay.
First of all, I think that if you look into Brazilian history, you will get an understanding of why our coffee market is like this.
Yep.
When in the beginning of the 20th century, we had some very terrible crisis, economic crisis. Mm-hmm. So coffee producers even burned their production because the price wasn't what they expected, etc. So this whole protection of the coffee market came from this, and we have, I don't know, maybe 100 years from this politics. And the second part is that I think that the question about Brazilians taking coffee from Australia or United States, despite these countries not being producers, falls into the same problem of chocolate. Brazil is one of the most the biggest producers of cacao, And if you ask for, if you go to this elite São Paulo society that says they're more educated than average, they will say that the best chocolate is Swiss, is from Switzerland or Belgium. And actually the beans are, the cacao is not from these countries, it's African. It's either African or Brazilian beans, cacao. So this falls into the same problem. The process of turning this cacao into a chocolate is what makes this recognizable as a good product, not the origin of the grain of the cacao.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so tied into, you know, the historical trade structures of, you know, why Brazil as, you know, as a colony initially, you know, and then how and where the goods went, you know, it's so very much tied up, you know, in the history of Brazil.
Okay, so thank you very much, Sabine. And now it's time for the last communication of this session. It is Francesc Fusté from the University of Girona in Catalonia, Spain. And the floor is yours. You have your 12 minutes.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for attending. It's a pleasure also for me to be here and to be able to present this piece of research. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you very much. This presentation is entitled Robots and Gastronomy, a Sustainable Experience. So this is a part of a bigger project where we are trying to understand both the robotization of gastronomy, both from production and consumption perspectives. And when we talk about the adoption of the technology and robotics by hospitality and tourism, we have some of the first examples in these ordering machines. And here, this technology has evolved rapidly during the last decade, the last couple of decades, and the implementation of robots in both hospitality and restaurant services is growing a lot in recent years, and this is accelerated by the pandemics. So the spread of the coronavirus, as all of us know, has led to the closure of tourism services, has led to the temporary or even permanent closure of restaurants. And from the beginning of summer in the Northern Hemisphere and winter in the Southern Hemisphere, the restaurants started to reopen again since the measures of lockdown and travel restrictions were easier. So robotics and technology mean that helped restaurants to accomplish the new legal rules, the social distance measures, and this means that the use of technology and robots, as we'll see later, is now more important than ever. So as a result of doing a first preliminary observation work in how restaurants and food services adapted to this new pandemic context, we found, of course, that the first driver is technology. So this is an example of a robotic arm which serves this food in Singapore. So this machine can serve up to 80 bowls per hour. And also the robots were adopted in the form of waiters, in the form of bartenders. I also included a couple of clips to illustrate. And it's clear that nowadays the technology is the most important factor in terms of, one of the most important factors in terms of restaurants trying to reopen again and trying to create new but still meaningful and memorable experiences for customers. And other factor that we observe is the creativity. In the first presentation, Maria mentioned that this difference between creativity and innovation. So creativity here, or restaurants were urged to be creative, because to be creative, it means to be resilient, and hopefully this leads, as Maria told earlier, to innovation processes that can be widely accepted by community. But in terms of restaurants, we have examples of the plastic bubbles, separation lines. Also, this picture shows how we can meet these social distance measures. No? We just sit teddy bears in the tables, just with the objective that the restaurant doesn't look empty. And also there is an amazing example in Vilnius, and also in some cities in Germany. They place some mannequins with local designs from local fashion designers, with the same purpose as the teddy bears in the picture. So this helps to create still a closed environment, an environment where customers are willing to visit, are willing to again share the food in the table. And the last resilient factor we observe is first technology, second creativity, and the third one, these home kits. No? In plenty of restaurants, just again getting involved in the creation of these do-it-yourself kits with the pizza, also examples from sweets and other foods. For example, there is a Japanese celebrity chef in New York City, I don't now remember the name, which who is creating also the bento boxes to prepare at home. So this is a form of again innovation process that allows, during the more restrictive period, no, when you cannot go to the restaurants, but you can take some foods of the restaurants and make the dish at home. No, it's like you eat and go, or you take or you order and then assemble the food at home. But if we focus specifically on the matter of this presentation, no, when we deal with the robot-based research, we can just realize how this has evolved in recent years. And from the first industrial robots, or let's say these first order machines, where you can just place your order and then grab the food. We also have examples of robots that can prepare quick coffees or basic meals, like these basic arms, robotic arms. And this has progressively evolved to service robots. And service robots mean both personal and professional robots. And it means that the robots are gathering higher levels of autonomy, no? And this allows the robot human service encounter, which of course challenges the notion of hospitality, and this is one of the problems I will discuss later. But this professionalization, this higher levels of autonomy of robots allow them to take orders at the table, allow them also to prepare more complex meals. So we have examples of restaurants which are being run by fully robotic kitchens. And this is obviously a result of this rapid technological development, no? And also the adoption by tourism and hospitality industries of this technology and artificial intelligence appliances. So I have included here 3 small clips about how robots are implemented in restaurant and gastronomy experiences, because I just said earlier, robots are waiters, robots are bartenders, and robots also now are chefs. And I will share with you these small videos. So it is obvious that this type of technology is not available to anyone, and it is expensive to achieve or to implement it in a restaurant. But of course, this creates a sense of a safe and secure environment, which in this pandemic context is crucial for the development of the gastronomy and restaurant experiences. And the second one is a robot bartender. This, as you see here, is a bar in a cruise, a harmony of the seas of the Royal Caribbean. And the robot prepares, so you can order in the screen or your mobile phone, and then the robot prepares the drink, and then you pick the drink in the drink in the bar itself. And the last one, this is a robot, let's say robot chef, which can prepare more complex meals, and which is an example of what the most innovative restaurants in the world are trying to do. And okay, so that is a kind of more incredible or unbelievable experience. And what all that means, right? Of course, we have implementation of robotics, which is useful in terms of efficiency and optimization, sorry. And implementation of robots can lead to more efficient queue management. Also, we saw about the ordering the food. Also, in terms of mechanical or more technical processes where robots can replace human labor. But also in terms of the contact, the human-robot service encounter. Robots do not have language barriers, so they can set a conversation in any language, which is also an opportunity. They can also build storytelling or a narrative of the restaurant, the menu, the place where the restaurant is sold, the features of the idiosyncrasies of the food and dishes which are offered, which also represents an added value. And here is where I would like to connect with the previous discussions in this panel, and also with the relation between robots and gastronomy from a sustainable perspective. So it's difficult to imagine that we can place a robot in the middle of a rural setting, and then you go in a mountain restaurant and some robot comes and serve you. This pretty unbelievable. But how we can still maintain a sense of authenticity, a sense of sustainability by implementing robots in our restaurants or in our gastronomy and food services. This is also a question of the philosophy of the business, right? If we are able to manage a balance between human to human interaction and human to robot interaction, and we are able to offer, let's say, a menu which is based on locally ground food, on seasonal, as Helen previously discussed, seasonal food. So if the robot is creating this authentic narrative which is based on the territory, on the terroir concept, we will be able to adopt this technology, which seems that is here to stay, and not only to stay, but also to expand the tourist experience and the sustainable tourist experience. And only that way we will be able to place robots at the center of the tourist experience, but maintain the sense of the experience. And finally, moving to the last slide, and we need or I would like to open a discussion, which probably some of you will be willing to comment on this controversial topic. There is a fight, of course, between human and robots being placed at the center of service encounter. We know that the soul, the charm of the human to human interaction cannot be
Hello, Francesc. You there? Hello?
Are able to create memorable or unique experiences, and we need to keep doing that, but without losing this notion of hospitality. I'm done. Thank you so much. I'm sorry if I'm over time, and I would be pleased to discuss with you or answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Okay, Francesc, thanks very much. And now it's time for the last questions of the session. So your turn.
Yes, Francesc. I from a, well, I study in a restaurant school, so in the gastronomic sector, especially directed to form restaurant personnel. So this is a very problematic area because what does all these professionals that are trying to, you know, be built in this area will be use instead of them robotics, but more than that, more than the personal area. Do you think that is because, for example, when you go to a restaurant, especially a certain level of restaurants, you expect to have a certain experience, to be guided, to have a sensory experience like the ones mentioned in the beginning of this session. So how can a robot can, at least as of now, can simulate this kind of experience and also understand the humanities of the client? Because that's especially with the service, they have to be very open to understand what are the necessities of the customers at the moment. I mean, I understand this maybe in a fast food chain or in these kind of services, but when you go upscale, I don't see a clear connection between these two.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question. Yeah, so the difficult points here, how we can merge, or how we can combine, the tasks, the best tasks that a robot can do without replacing the human labor, in the sense that this not goes in so losing of the experience we may pursue. So in terms of fast food chains, it is easier to apply because the robots can be efficient, quick, and then you just order, grab the food, and go. And in a more let's say gourmet experience, it's a bit more difficult to adopt robots in the service encounter itself, but not in tasks, for example, of cleaning or even taking orders. Or the point is here how we implement the robotic service, depending also the type of restaurant, and considering accurately the tasks the robots can do better, because of course robots cannot reason, they don't have emotions, cannot solve special demands, as you say, or needs of the customer. So we need to accurately plan that.
Thank you.
Any question? More questions, comments?
I have another question.
Helen.
Let's see, there I am. One of the things that struck me as I've thought about robots and food and restaurants, or robots used elsewhere, is the way they obliterate the possibilities for encounter. So in this case, it's not confined specifically to the hospitality that happens in restaurants, because that's kind of the purpose of the restaurant. But it obliterates the possibilities for encounter with the radical otherness of the other that should happen in any sort of relationship. And so in other words, it's creating like hermetic spaces of unitary personality instead of bounded or connected spaces in which it's possible for me to connect with some other, but the other who makes me, by way of this face-to-face encounter. And so for me, this comes down to a sort of Levinasian ethical sort of question of what does it do to our possibilities for relationship, period, not for the sales that come in the hospitality industry, for the demonstration of hospitality in some particular setting, but what it does to our fundamental possibilities for relationship. And I wonder, well, what you think of this in an ethical sense, in that light.
Okay, thank you for your question. Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, of course, because when we travel, we appreciate the human-human relationship, to explore also the local culture by talking to the waiter, to the chef, and robots here, will lose. I mean, we need to, as previously said, to understand how robots can help, can add to the experience without losing the notion of hospitality, which means a direct relationship, a direct human-to-human contact. And how to place here the robots? Yeah, robots again are useful for a specific task. Are useful to assure these social and distancing measures. Are useful in terms of being fast in placing orders and preparing the food. But a lot of research needs to be done in terms of how this human-robot service encounter will add X value to the human-to-human service encounter, which is placed at the core of the hospitality experience.
Okay, more questions? Okay, so thank you very much. This is the end of our second session. And I have some interesting information for you. You are planning to attend our next sessions. We have to say first that our next session this afternoon will be a kind of two sessions in one. The first part of the session with the same link. The first part of the session will be in English. Only two communications in English. That with Rebecca Acosta from the University of Tours and Cassandra Dalemule. And we will link with another second session in Portuguese with our Brazilian participants who are in another time zone. So there will be two interventions in English and other four in Portuguese. And after that, we'll have our last session tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So thank you very much to be here, to attend this session, this meeting, and see you later or tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. See you later.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Abby,
Bye.
does that mean the 1720 session is canceled?
Yes, 15:20.
It's canceled.
No, not at all.
Oh. So there's one session at 15:20, which is the one that will be combined.
Yeah.
Okay, and then another one.
That will be combined, two communications in English and four in Portuguese.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so see you later.
We'll be together soon. Bye.